Nathan West had always been a master of diplomacy. As an Earth envoy, he had been on countless missions to foreign planets, negotiating peace treaties, trade agreements, and alliances between Earth and other galactic civilizations. His job was to keep things calm, smooth, and professional, even in the most tense situations. But today, he was walking into a storm of his own making. The Vireland Empire was one of the most powerful alien races in the galaxy, and its queen, Nyria, was known for her strength, wisdom, and ruthless efficiency. Nathan had spent days studying their culture, preparing for this meeting. He knew their customs, their rituals, and the subtle signs of respect and honor that must be followed when interacting with the Virelands. But despite all his preparation, there was one thing Nathan had never expected, making a mistake that would change everything. The palace was unlike anything Nathan had ever seen. It was a grand structure made of shimmering glass-like material, stretching high into the sky with towering spires and intricate designs that seemed to flow and change with the angle of the light. Inside, the halls were decorated with strange but beautiful tapestries, depicting scenes of the Vireland people in their past wars, their triumphs, and their most sacred rituals. As Nathan entered the grand hall for the meeting, he felt the weight of the moment settle on his shoulders. This wasn't just another diplomatic negotiation. This was a chance to secure peace between Earth and the Virelands, to end centuries of mistrust and hostility. He could already feel the tension in the air, thick and palpable. He was walking into the lion's den, and his every word, every gesture would be scrutinized. The room was vast, with tall, sweeping arches that seemed to reach for the stars. At the far end of the hall, on a raised platform, sat Queen Nyria. Her presence was commanding, even from a distance. She was tall and regal, her skin a deep violet hue that shimmered in the dim light of the hall. Her eyes were a piercing yellow, glowing faintly, like twin suns burning with quiet intensity. As she gazed down at him, Nathan felt a strange mixture of awe and fear. This was a woman who ruled an empire, and her reputation was enough to make even the bravest men quiver. Nathan bowed slightly, as was customary, but he knew that this wasn't just any bow. This was a Vireland bow, a deep gesture of respect. It was supposed to be done with grace and precision, but in the heat of the moment, with the weight of the negotiations pressing on him, Nathan's movements were clumsy. He lowered his head, then, unsure of the proper protocol, extended his hand toward the queen. In Vireland culture, it was a gesture of invitation, a symbol of unity. But for the Virelands, it was much more than that. When his hand extended too far, he realized his mistake too late. The gesture he had made was not one of simple respect. It was the bonding gesture, an ancient Vireland ritual that only those who were deeply connected, even in love, could perform. It was a sacred bond, one that united two beings forever, both physically and mentally. The moment he made the gesture, he knew it was wrong. But the room fell silent, and the shock on Nyria's face told him everything he needed to know. The queen's eyes widened for just a moment, and then her expression hardened into something unreadable. There was no anger, no immediate rebuke, just a deep, intense silence that filled the room. Nathan's heart began to race. He could hear the blood pounding in his ears, the sound of his own panic. The mistake he had made was monumental. The Vireland dignitaries around him began to whisper, their voices a low hum that grew louder with each passing second. Nathan could feel the weight of their gazes on him, their eyes full of judgment. He had broken the most sacred rule of Vireland culture, and the consequences would be severe. "Do you understand what you have done?" Nyria's voice was calm, but there was an underlying tension in her words that made Nathan's stomach churn. I didn't mean," Nathan began, his voice faltering. He stumbled over his words, trying to explain himself, but it was too late. The damage was done. "The bonding gesture cannot be undone," Nyria said, her tone colder now. "You have made a vow whether you realize it or not. This is not a mere misunderstanding, Nathan West. You have bound yourself to me." Her words were like ice, each syllable freezing the air around them. Nathan's mind raced. He had heard of the bonding gesture before, of course, but he had never imagined he would be caught in such a situation. It was reserved for those who truly meant to unite, to form a lifelong partnership, a bond that could never be broken. For the Virelands, it was the highest form of respect and commitment, and yet Nathan had made the gesture by mistake, not knowing the consequences. We must discuss this," Nathan said, his voice trembling. I didn't mean to. There is no room for discussion, Nyria interrupted. Her gaze was sharp, cutting through him like a blade. You have given me your word whether intentionally or not. The Vireland law cannot be ignored. It is binding. Nathan's stomach churned. He could feel his pulse quicken, and his thoughts were swirling, unable to focus. The words binding and law echoed in his mind. This wasn't something he could just explain away. This was a commitment that would change his life, his future, forever. Do you understand? Nyria asked again, her voice now softer, almost sad. She leaned forward slightly, her golden eyes locking onto his. You are now bound to me in a way no one else can be. The Vireland Empire demands loyalty and unity, Nathan. Your mistake has already sealed our fates. The bond cannot be broken. Nathan felt a wave of nausea wash over him. He had made a mistake, a simple one, but it had catastrophic consequences. What was he supposed to do now? How could he explain this to Earth? How could he explain it to his team, to the people who had sent him here to secure a peace treaty? His mind was reeling. This wasn't just a political mistake. It was personal, too. His fate was now tied to the Vireland Queen, and there was no escaping it. The tension in the room was palpable, and Nathan felt as if the walls were closing in around him. He stood there, frozen, unsure of what to say or do. The Queen's gaze was unwavering, and he could see the weight of her responsibility bearing down on her. She, too, was trapped in this bond, and yet there was a certain sadness in her eyes, as though she understood what this mistake would cost both of them. The Vireland law is clear, Nyria said softly. You will marry me. It is the only way to honor the gesture you have made. Nathan's breath caught in his throat. He had expected many things during this mission, but this was beyond anything he could have imagined. He had come here to negotiate, to secure peace, and now he was being forced into a marriage with an alien queen. How could he possibly get out of this? The Queen's words echoed in his mind, but he knew deep down that there was no way to undo what had been done. The bond had been made. The treaty with Earth was still on the line, and he had no choice but to go along with it. The thought of marrying Nyria, of being bound to her for life, sent shivers down his spine, but he also understood the reality of the situation. There was no turning back. I understand, Nathan said finally, his voice steady despite the storm of emotions inside him. He had no other choice. If this is the only way to fix the mistake, then we'll proceed. But know this, Queen Nyria, I did not mean for any of this to happen. Nyria nodded, her expression unreadable. It matters not. The law is the law, and now we are bonded. Nathan swallowed hard. The room around him seemed to blur as he tried to process what had just happened. The political stakes had never been higher, and yet now he found himself entangled in something far more personal than he could have ever prepared for. And so Nathan West, Earth diplomat, was now bound to a Vireland Queen by an ancient, sacred gesture, a mistake that would haunt him for the rest of his life. He could only hope that somehow, some way, he would be able to navigate this new reality, a reality that held far more than just political consequences. It held his future, his very soul, in its grip. As they led him to his new quarters in the royal palace, Nathan felt the weight of what was to come pressing down on him. A marriage he hadn't chosen, a bond he couldn't break. His fate was sealed. And he wasn't sure if he was ready for it. Nathan had never been one to feel trapped. Throughout his years as a diplomat, he had faced countless challenges, hostile alien races, cultural misunderstandings, and tense negotiations. He had always managed to find a way out, to talk his way through the most difficult situations. But now, as he sat alone in his royal quarters, the reality of his situation was sinking in. There was no way out this time. The Queen's words echoed in his mind. The bond cannot be broken. A mistake, a simple, well-meaning gesture had brought him here. Now his future was tied to Queen Nyria, and there was nothing he could do to undo it. His quarters were lavish, no surprise there. The palace was a symbol of the Vireland Empire's power, and it was clear that nothing had been spared when it came to luxury. The walls shimmered with a strange metallic sheen, and the furniture was elegant but unusual, crafted from materials Nathan couldn't quite identify. There was a large bed in the center of the room, draped in dark purple silks, and a window that looked out over the vast, alien landscape. The stars above seemed closer here, as if he could reach out and touch them. But despite the beauty, Nathan couldn't shake the sense of unease that had settled in his chest. He hadn't signed up for this. He hadn't signed up for a life bound to an alien queen, a life where his every action, every word would be scrutinized. The weight of it was heavy, and Nathan found himself unable to escape the thought that this was no ordinary diplomatic mission. This was a prison. The bond had already begun to affect him in ways he couldn't explain. It wasn't just that his connection to Nyria had been forged by accident, it was real. He could feel it. The strange tingling in his chest, the sense that he wasn't truly alone, even when he was. His thoughts often aligned with hers, his emotions mirrored by hers. There was a constant pull, an invisible thread that connected them in ways that were both terrifying and fascinating. For the first time in his life, Nathan felt truly out of control. The Queen had been clear. There would be no undoing the bond. No way to return to his previous life. And as much as he wanted to argue, to push back, he knew the truth. The Vireland law was absolute. He had no choice but to accept it. But that didn't mean he had to like it. For the next few days, Nathan kept to himself, retreating into the quiet of his quarters. He couldn't bear the thought of facing Nyria again, not yet. He didn't know how to navigate this new reality, how to act as though everything was normal when everything had changed. It was on the third day, when the silence became unbearable, that Nyria came to him. She didn't knock. There was no need to. The door to his quarters slid open with a soft hiss, and she entered, her tall, graceful figure filling the doorway. She wore a long, flowing robe made of some shimmering material that caught the light with each movement. Her golden eyes locked onto Nathan's, and for a moment he could have sworn he felt her gaze penetrate straight through him. "Nathan," she said, her voice calm but firm. "We need to talk." He rose from the chair where he had been sitting, his thoughts still cloudy from the tension between them. "About what?" "About our situation," Nyria replied. "About what happens next." Nathan's heart skipped a beat. He had expected her to be cold, distant, perhaps even angry at the mistake he had made. But instead, there was something softer in her voice, an understanding that surprised him. I don't know what to say," Nathan admitted, running a hand through his hair. "I never meant for this to happen." "I know," Nyria said, "but it has, and now we must deal with it." Nathan looked at her, taking in her regal appearance. She was every bit the powerful queen that rumors had described. Her presence was commanding, yet there was a quiet sadness in her expression, as if she too was burdened by the weight of the bond. "How do we deal with it?" Nathan asked, his voice low. "What do we do now?" The queen walked toward him, her movements graceful and deliberate. "First, we must accept that the bond is real. The Vireland people have their laws, and they cannot be ignored. To break it would bring dishonor to both of us, and that is something neither of us wants." Nathan nodded slowly, the weight of her words sinking in. "So, we're married now?" "Not in the way you think," Nyria replied. "The bond is not simply a marriage, Nathan. It is a connection that goes deeper than that. It binds us in ways that neither of us can control. It is more than just a title or a legal formality. It is a part of who we are now." Nathan frowned. "I didn't ask for this." "I didn't either," Nyria said softly, "but the bond has been made, and now we must learn to live with it." They stood there in silence for a moment, the gravity of the situation settling over them both. Nathan felt a strange sense of helplessness creeping in. He wasn't sure how to move forward. He wasn't sure how to make sense of what had happened or how to fix the mistake that had thrown his life into turmoil. Nyria broke the silence. "We must learn to work together. For our people, for the Vireland Empire, and for the future of Earth. This bond will affect both of us, but it doesn't have to be a curse. We can make it work." Nathan looked at her, searching her eyes for any sign of deception. He found none. She was sincere. Perhaps that was the most unsettling thing of all. This alien queen, whose people had ruled over countless star systems, was asking for his help. She wasn't treating him like a prisoner, but like an equal. "I'll try," Nathan said, his voice barely above a whisper. "But this is all so overwhelming. I don't know if I can do this." "You don't have to do it alone," Nyria said, her voice steady. "We are bonded now. We are connected in ways neither of us fully understands, but I will be with you, and you will be with me." The words hung in the air between them, heavy with meaning. Nathan felt the truth of them, the weight of their connection settling into the pit of his stomach. He could feel her presence now, like a shadow that followed him wherever he went. It wasn't just in his mind, it was in his body too. He could sense her emotions, her thoughts, as if they were his own. "I'm not used to this," Nathan said, a small laugh escaping him. "I've spent my entire life learning how to keep my distance from people, and now I can't get away from you." Nyria smiled softly, though there was sadness in her eyes. "And I cannot escape from you either." There was a quiet moment between them, a strange understanding passing through the air. It was not a romantic connection, not yet, but it was something deep, something real, a bond forged by mistake, but one that would not easily be broken. Nathan took a deep breath, trying to steady himself. This wasn't how he had imagined his life turning out. He had thought he would return to Earth with stories of diplomacy, of success. But now his future seemed uncertain, tangled in a web of alien laws and an unintended bond. "So, what happens now?" Nathan asked, his voice low. Nyria's gaze softened, and she stepped closer to him. "Now we begin to learn what it means to be bound together. It will not be easy, but we will find our way, for our people, for Earth, and for the future." Nathan met her gaze, the weight of the moment pressing on him. He had made a mistake, but he could not change it. All he could do now was try to make the best of it. With Nyria's help, perhaps they could navigate the challenges ahead. But as he stood there, with the Queen's eyes fixed on his, Nathan couldn't shake the feeling that his life would never be the same again. Nathan had hoped for a moment of peace, but the tension never really left. His life had been irrevocably changed by a mistake that now tied him to Queen Nyria in a bond that neither of them had asked for. In the beginning, he had tried to keep his distance, to remain emotionally detached from the situation. But now, after weeks of living alongside Nyria, something inside him had shifted. He wasn't sure if it was the bond that had changed him, or if it was the quiet understanding they had developed, but he couldn't deny that his feelings had evolved. Despite everything, he still wasn't sure what to make of the connection between them. The bond was real. He could feel it in his chest, like a pulse that beat in time with Nyria's own. He could sense her emotions as clearly as he could feel his own. Sometimes it was overwhelming, this constant awareness of her presence in his mind. But other times, it was strangely comforting. The days had blended together in a haze of diplomatic meetings, long discussions with the Vireland court, and quiet moments alone with Nyria. They had agreed for the sake of their people to work together, for Earth's sake, for the Vireland Empire's sake. The peace treaty, which had once seemed so distant, now felt more fragile than ever. If they didn't find a way to make this work, everything they had fought for could fall apart. Nathan had never been one to give up, but as the days stretched on, the reality of the situation pressed down on him. He wasn't just negotiating peace now. He was living in it. Living in the consequences of a single gesture, an unintentional act that had bound him to a powerful alien queen and possibly doomed both their futures. He sat in his quarters one evening, staring out at the alien landscape beyond the window. The stars were brighter here, closer than they had ever appeared from Earth. They seemed to hang in the sky like jewels, almost within reach. He wondered if, by the end of all this, he would still be able to see the stars as they were, free and vast, or if they, too, would be forever altered by the bond that now tied him to this alien world. Nyria had been distant the past few days, caught up in the business of ruling. It was clear that her position as queen was never easy, but the pressure of their union had made it even harder. She had been a queen long before Nathan had come into her life, but now she had to deal with the expectations of their bond as well. The weight of it was clearly starting to affect her. She was still the powerful, regal woman he had met all those weeks ago, but now Nathan could sense the cracks beneath the surface, the moments of vulnerability when she let her guard down. He had to admit he wasn't immune to the pull of their connection either. He could feel it when she was near, the way his heartbeat quickened, the way his thoughts seemed to sync with hers. It was like being drawn into a current that he couldn't control. There was no escaping it. And yet, the more time they spent together, the more Nathan began to realize that the bond between them wasn't as simple as it had seemed. It wasn't just about law or politics. It was about something deeper, something personal. His thoughts were interrupted by the soft sound of footsteps approaching. Nathan turned to see Nyria standing in the doorway, her expression unreadable. For a moment, they simply stared at each other. Her golden eyes, so intense and filled with so many emotions, locked onto his. Nathan felt the familiar pull of the bond between them, the magnetic force that seemed to bind them together no matter how hard he tried to push it away. "I need to speak with you," Nyria said, her voice calm but firm. Nathan nodded, standing up from the chair by the window. "What's on your mind?" "There is something I must discuss with you," Nyria continued. "Something about our future." The words hung in the air between them, heavy with meaning. Nathan had known this conversation was coming. He had been avoiding it for days, but he knew that sooner or later they would have to face it head-on. "I've been thinking," Narya began, stepping into the room, "about what this bond means for both of us, and for our people." Nathan swallowed hard, unsure of what to say. The weight of her words pressed down on him, and he could feel his heart pounding in his chest. "What do you mean?" "I mean that the bond we share is not just something that affects us personally. It affects everything around us. The people of the Vireland Empire, your people back on Earth, all of them are watching us. They are waiting for us to lead to prove that this connection can be more than just a mistake. We cannot afford to fail." Nathan ran a hand through his hair, his mind racing. He had known the stakes were high, but hearing it from her, hearing the desperation in her voice, made it all feel so much more real. He had to admit Narya was right. They couldn't fail. Not when the future of their people was on the line. "Do you think we can make it work?" Nathan asked, his voice quieter now. Narya looked at him, her expression softening for the first time in days. "I don't know, but I'm willing to try, and I hope you are too." Nathan felt a strange mix of emotions flood through him. There was fear, yes, fear of failure, fear of the unknown. But there was also something else, something that had begun to grow over the past few weeks: trust. It had started out as a mere spark, but now it was a flicker that threatened to turn into something more. "I'll try," Nathan said, his voice steady. "I'll try for the peace treaty, for our people, and for us." Narya nodded, the slightest smile tugging at the corner of her lips. "Good. We may not have chosen this, but we can still make it ours." The bond between them pulsed, an undeniable force that filled the room. Nathan couldn't escape it. He didn't want to. The connection they shared, though forced, though born out of a mistake, had become something more. They had become something more. And as much as he had fought against it, he knew that there was no going back. In the days that followed, Nathan and Narya worked together more closely than ever. They attended meetings, signed agreements, and spoke to their people. The pressure of their forced union hung over them, but they managed to keep up the appearance of a united front. Behind closed doors, they continued to learn about each other, not just as rulers, but as people. Their bond, though strange and unnerving, had given them a level of understanding that no one else could ever experience. They were forced to rely on each other in ways neither had expected. And yet, as their connection deepened, so did the complications. The Vireland court had begun to question their bond. Some viewed it as a political advantage, a way to solidify their alliance with Earth. Others, more conservative, viewed it as a weakness. They did not understand how a bond forged by mistake could hold any real power. To them, it was a symbol of failure. And then there were the whispers from Earth. Their governments, their people, they were watching everything. Nathan had received countless reports from Earth's embassy, each one reminding him of the expectations. He couldn't afford to lose their trust. He couldn't afford to fail. But despite the mounting pressure, there were moments when Nathan and Narya found solace in each other's company. There were moments when the bond didn't feel like a burden, but like something that connected them on a deeper level. They would sit together in silence, simply feeling each other's presence. It was in these moments that Nathan began to understand the true power of their bond. And then, just when things seemed to be stabilizing, a new challenge arrived, one that threatened to tear everything apart. A rival faction within the Vireland Empire, unhappy with Narya's rule, had begun to plot against them. The whispers of rebellion had been growing louder, and soon they could no longer be ignored. The future of the Empire and of their bond was at risk. Nathan could feel the change in the air. The tension, the uncertainty, it was all building to something. As he looked across the table at Narya, he realized that the stakes were higher than ever. They had come so far together, but now they had to fight not just for their bond, but for everything they had worked for. "This is it," Nathan thought, his heart racing. "This is the moment that will define us, the moment where we either succeed or fail." The battle ahead would not be easy, but together, Nathan and Narya would face it. And whether they succeeded or not, their bond, whether born of mistake or fate, would carry them through. And in the end, maybe that would be enough.